Hey everyone, this is Disc Junkie. Wow, and you are listening to... Why am I wowing myself? That's so weird. I didn't mean it that way. Let's start over. This is Disc Junkie, and you are listening to a new episode of Stories of Addiction, the podcast that never really seems to get off the ground. This is episode 3, as you probably know already. Just want to make some opening remarks. For starters, we can just mention the audio quality. As you probably noticed, this is already much better than the previous episode, recorded on an iPhone without any sort of special setup, which really caused some poor audio quality, which is a shame because I thought it came out as a great episode anyway, but I obviously would have liked it to have much better audio quality because it definitely did suffer from that. I've actually decided to pick up a microphone. Now, it's nothing special. It is a Smart Lav Plus from Rode. I think this is actually a surprisingly good microphone. I bought it for, hard to do the conversion, but maybe like 60 euro. And the good thing is that you can actually hook this up to your iPhone. And if you have one of those little converter thingies for like the iPhone 7, when they removed the regular ports, you can just use that converter and plug it in that way and it still works as a regular microphone. And it actually offers quite good quality for this price, and it's small. You essentially just attach it to like your shirt collar. Not that I wear a shirt, but I'll just crumple up my t-shirt and it works anyway. My only real concern with this is that it feels like it could easily break if you're not careful. Like if you sit on it or something happens, just like the clips and stuff. Should probably have maybe enforced that so it wouldn't have been so easy to break. The story today is something that's actually been in my head for the longest of time. I think when I first started recording episode 1, I had like a couple of pieces in my collection that I felt like, okay, this is stuff I want to talk about, and this was one of those pieces. And it also echoes of episode 1 because it is an item which is quite closely related to the item which is mentioned in episode 1. And I think I even make a brief mention of this in that episode, but I can't really remember. But in any case, I'm not going to ramble on too much in this intro, so hope you liked the episode, hope you prefer the audio quality and think that it's good enough. This is Stories of Addiction episode 3, and the individual title for this episode is Letters to Hollywood. And yeah, I'm still gonna play the quirky jingle thing. I got stories of addiction. Yeah, I got stories of addiction.
What? I don't know what I'm saying. Stop filming me! Alright,
so we are live, I guess. And the story which I'm going to tell you today is about one of my top 5 collectibles in my film collection, and it's also something that's actually related to an item I've been talking about in the first episode of this podcast, which was the Minority Report briefcase. Whatever name you want to give it, the aluminum tech case, the Academy screener cage, yada yada. If you want to know more about it, just go back and listen to the first episode of this podcast. But in any case, in order to give this thing, which I want to discuss, any sort of justice, I think we should just start by going back to 2008, and more specifically, December the 2nd in 2008. When I was essentially just browsing eBay, sort of randomly, looking for cool stuff to buy, I guess. Sort of browsing the entertainment memorabilia section. Presumably I was just searching for rare promo or something of that nature. And I came across this item which was listed as The Dark Knight Rare Promo Academy Screener Case. And it showed this picture of a briefcase, very similar to the one which I had acquired earlier of Minority Report, but it was much smaller, roughly half the size. So it was sort of like a mini attache case, I guess you could say. Like something you would expect to find, I don't know, maybe makeup in, presumably very expensive makeup, and I'm guessing I would spend a lot more money on this item than I would ever spend on makeup, or a woman would spend on makeup. I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about, and I'm not very knowledgeable about makeup at all, to be honest. But it doesn't really matter. So this bizarre little attache case, it essentially has a little card from the movie The Dark Knight, which is of course the second film in the Dark Knight trilogy, the first one being Batman Begins and the third and final installment being The Dark Knight Rises. My favorite was always the second film, as I think with a lot of the other fans of this film series by Christopher Nolan. But in any case, I decided to contact the seller, so I wrote him. These are my exact words. Hi there, how much would you charge for shipping to Sweden? Also, do you know anything about how the screening copy was originally packaged? Was there a keep case or something more unusual for it? Because essentially in the description it did mention that this was a screening copy presentation, like there was supposed to be a screening DVD included with it, but this particular seller didn't include it because the DVDs, there were actually two of them in this case originally. The movie was split over 2 discs for some reason, and these DVDs were essentially encoded with the identity of the receiver, which is actually quite common for this specific type of set. I got a lot of info from the seller, and I'm not going to name him by name, as this was something which was requested, and it's not relating to this podcast specifically, but yeah, we're going to get back to that detail. Oh god, I was so young back then. I had an eBay score of 99. Yeah, that's a frame of reference right there. I wrote this guy and he was really helpful, and not that I know if you're going to be listening to this, but if you are, just a big thank you. This was a man who was a part of the HFPA, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. And just to summarize, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association is a group of, I don't know what you would say. They are essentially spread all over the globe, but it's an American organization, and they are the ones who judge the Golden Globes, which is closely related to the Academy Awards, I guess you could say, but it's 2 different things. Just want to make that clear, because commonly these items can be mistaken as being like Academy Award screeners, which they are not. So in any case, it's a small case. It's got these cards with some info about the movie on them, and it's got these 2 screening DVDs in this really simple cardboard sleeve. This seller, he was essentially just selling the attaché case and informational cards listing some of the categories the film was nominated for and such and such. I decided to essentially ask him if he would be interested in selling the screening discs and the little cardboard case that the discs should be housed in. As soon as I saw this, I was thinking like, oh my god, I gotta find this. And you know, a lot of the times with promo items like this, you have to be sort of on your feet from the beginning. A lot of the time you will see really cool promotional items for movies or TV series or whatever it is, and this is usually very early on before the films have sort of been released on DVD and Blu-ray, so it's this instance where you might not have been given the chance to essentially see the movie. You know, I sort of felt like, you know, I gotta jump on this now and I gotta get it at a good price, because this thing is gonna go off the chart in terms of, you know, just prices skyrocketing based on the film's popularity. And so I started checking a bunch of different listings for the same item, and I found a second listing ongoing at the same time, much more cheap. I don't remember if it was like a buy it now option, but for one reason or another I essentially decided to go with the other listing because it was cheaper. But they were essentially the same in that, you know, the contents were the same. It's just the screening attaché case and the cards. But this seller that I got in touch with the first time, which was a HFBA member, he was incredibly helpful, and he actually said like, you know what, you seem like a really nice guy, and if you do win the auction, I will add the cardboard sleeve for the DVDs as a gesture, like, you know, don't worry about it, I'll add this for you. He didn't realize that I had already bid and actually won the other auction, so I was no longer aiming to bid on his auction. So he was sort of replying back saying like, you know what, I'm gonna add this. I've now updated the auction to include the sleeve, like they make an edit saying you will also be receiving this cardboard sleeve. So I get this info and I'm like, damn it, now he's gonna be sending the sleeve to, you know, whoever wins the auction, and I'm not gonna be able to bid on it because I've already won it. And I mean, these were selling for quite a lot of money, so it's not something I would just pick up and resell, because, you know, back then I just didn't have that kind of money. So then the cardboard sleeve was essentially lost, but we did sort of continue talking a bit, and he actually said that, you know, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to sell the DVD because it's imprinted with my identity on it, and I really don't want to get in trouble for selling these. But he said that, you know, maybe you can get in touch with me in a couple of months or so once, you know, the movie has essentially premiered, I think. He was very specific that, you know, I don't want my name mentioned anywhere, you know, as was doing my website and updating photos. And so he said, you know, I don't want you to post any pictures of the discs that are detailed. There's essentially like a barcode on the discs. So he was sort of very specific saying that, you know, I don't want my name mentioned and I don't want the barcode on the discs to be showing in any photos you post because, you know, I don't want this getting back to me. Sort of like a mortal sin, like, you know, talking to someone who's like being threatened by the mafia or something. Like, you know, don't mention my name, man. This could have terrible consequences. And I mean, it is true. I mean, selling screening copies and stuff can actually get you in trouble if you are a member of the media or a person who receives these kind of items. You're essentially breaking the law. And I remember from his auction that he was always very specific and detailed about how he listed them, saying like, this is a screener item, but I'm not selling the actual DVD, I'm just selling the case. You know, he was sort of making reference to these specific laws and then paragraphs and such, saying that, you know, I am perfectly allowed to sell this as an entertainment memorabilia kind of thing. And we sort of kept in touch. You know, we went back and forth and things got delayed and yada yada. But essentially, he actually decided to sell me the discs. So once again, just like with the Minority Report case, this became something which I started acquiring in pieces. And he actually made me promise, like, you know, if I sell these to you, you are never allowed to resell them or to trade them to another collector. You know, if you are ever to resell this, you made me promise, and like you have to swear that you will destroy the discs because I don't ever want this coming back to me. He considered it that sensitive. I don't know if he would have changed his opinion at this time, but I have no interest in selling these and wouldn't betray his trust, which is also why I'm not going to mention his name in this podcast episode. Problem was that I was still missing this cardboard sleeve, and it seemed like every person who ever listed this, they never listed it with the sleeve. If you have the disc and sleeve, you're probably going to keep that because you're keeping the disc. You don't want to sell the discs because you don't want to get in trouble, and I guess you want to have them in something, so you might as well keep the case. Plus, it's a very cheap cardboard case. I mean, it's not even a digipack. There's no digitray in there. It's just flat cardboard with these cheap slits in it, which is a packaging style that I absolutely hate, I gotta say. But even so, you know, I really wanted to get this one. And so I'm not entirely sure how we came to talk about it, but after like, I don't know, weeks, months after his auction ended, I was contacted by one of my friends who's called Lidvin, and he wrote me this email saying like, you know, I bought this promotional Dark Knight case on eBay, and he sent some pics and like, do you know anything about this, seeing as you're such a knowledgeable guy on these things? And I'm like, oh wow, so you were the one who got that. And, you know, I told him the whole story, so I'm talking about these are the contents and such and such. Don't remember exactly what I said to him, but I was like, I'm guessing you're happy with having received the cardboard sleeve. Sort of told him like I was really bummed out about the fact that this was included because I was talking to the seller and I really wanted to get this from him, but he ended up including it in the listing, like at the last minute. And then my friend comes back to me saying, what are you talking about? I'm like, you know, he updated the auction. You're supposed to receive this cardboard sleeve. And then as it turned out, the seller didn't actually include the cardboard sleeve. By mistake, he essentially forgot about it. And I was, you know, I mean, this was my friend, so I wasn't too bummed about it. But, you know, when I sort of wrote it and realized that he didn't even know that this was included, it was like, just face palming myself, thinking like, you know, if I didn't say anything, I would have actually been able to acquire both of the items, probably, if I just got back to the seller again. But yeah, so now my friend knew about it, and I mean, I'm happy for him. This was a great guy, so I was happy to have him receive it. He didn't get it in the original package, but my friend did receive the sleeve later on. He received it as a separate package, and we sort of exchanged information. And I guess to some extent we sort of made a pact, if you want to call it that, where we said that, you know, we would both keep an eye out for this, and if we ever saw a listing for a complete set, we would tell the other person about it. and we would sort of try to cut our losses in terms of maybe even like going together and paying half each for like this new listing, and then we would just ship each other the missing pieces. So each of us would end up with a complete set, because that was sort of like the dream for both of us, to finally owning this thing in the way it was originally presented. And you know, we kept in touch over the years, but no one seemed to ever find this. And I mean, I was looking for it. I was really doing legwork here. Maybe not running around physically, but I was sitting at my computer and my legs were probably shaking just because I was stressed and anxious trying to hunt this down. And I mean, this is a hunt which I was, you know, doing over several years. And I'm not going to be too specific about the dates from now on, because I'll be referring to people, not naming them, but you know, I don't want you to be able to figure out exactly who these people are. We'll get back to that, sorry. I'm just rambling and getting into stuff which doesn't really need explaining yet, at least. So I started Googling, and I mean, I couldn't find any info as usual, but I got a lot of help from the original eBay seller, and he even got me a limitation on it, which was 93 copies exactly. And you might be wondering, like, why 93 copies? That's essentially because at the time there were 93 members of the HFPA. I mean, this changes all the time. New members get added, some members quit, yada yada. And so that's why the very specific 93, as opposed to a lot of typical limited editions, which usually you won't have such a specific odd number for limited edition. Now, I'm not entirely sure if the Minority Report and the Dark Knight set were limited to the same amount, but guessing they were around the same amount. The eBay seller who I talked to had also received a Minority Report case back in the day, and I think he was actually the guy who sold the case I ended up buying, but he sort of, you know, he sold it to another collector and then it sort of got back to me. Just a weird coincidence, but I mean, it's a very small circuit for these things. Yeah, like I was saying, you know, I started Googling these things. I actually started out with looking at the Hollywood Foreign Press Association website and sort of seeing listings of all the members. And it's not like you get like contact info for these people. It's essentially just a name. Seeing as these are spread all over the world, I essentially took like the most specific names, like names that were a bit weird or sort of easy to Google, and I started Googling these names of all these 93 members and sort of tried to find them, like if they had personal websites, if they were on Facebook, you know, just any kind of way to get in touch with them. And I started sending emails to like email addresses that I would find on forums where they might have registered at some point, you know, any kind of social media or any kind of internet sort of footprint that they had. I would just try to get in touch with them. And I mean, over the years, you know, every now and then I would get a response and maybe they would tip me off about another member who might have one. And it's not like I got a huge amount of response to this, but some people got back to me, and I did have a discussion with one or two, maybe three people who essentially had received this and still had it, but you know, for whatever reason, I was never able to purchase it from them. Usually because they were just busy being big fucking Hollywood people. I'm sorry, but it's just, from my experience, that's sort of just something that kept coming back. People were like, yeah, I'm gonna ship it to you. You know, it just kept getting delayed, and eventually, you know, it just fell apart and never happened. Then after a couple of years, I had been trying to do this, you know, the same way with the Minority Report case. I sort of sent emails to customer service at Warner Brothers and at the HFPA. A lot of the time, I guess people in Hollywood or people who receive these might not be too interested in talking about it. But yeah, I decided to go straight to the top. I'm not gonna say exactly when this was because I don't want to give away the identity of this person, just for the fact that I don't want to receive any sort of blowback. But yeah, this guy was a total jerk. So let me just call him Mr. Jerk. And Mr. Jerk, whenever this email was written, he was actually the president of the HFPA. So I went as high as I could go with this thing. And so I started writing, and I will be reading this word for word just as it is. And I have obviously replaced his name with Mr. Jerk. So, dear Mr. Jerk, my name is Oskar Falk and I am a DVD collector from Sweden. I got this email address through, this other member who I won't name, and I'm writing to you as a last resort, so I hope you can help me. I've written several members of the HFPA already and attempted to communicate with customer support and all the general channels without luck. I'll try to describe this as simply as I can. During 2008, the HFPA received 93 copies of a small promotional attache case sent out from Warner Brothers to promote the film The Dark Knight. This is what the case looked like, and then I'm including a couple of photos. I'm then listing some of the contents and yada yada. As a collector, I'm very interested in media packaging, and I am desperately trying to track down one of these sets. I understand that screening sets are very sensitive, and if the discs are not available to sell or give away on your part, I totally understand. Either way, any part of this set is of interest, and in particular the purple cardboard sleeve, as this is one of the few items that I have very little info on. And here's a picture of that. Is there any chance that you can help me locate one of these sleeves or other part of the set? I am writing only as a collector, and I'm looking for this as a personal interest and in no way trying to make money by selling them or such. I'm guessing that many HFPA members still have their discs and purple sleeves laying around, as the discs are illegal to sell. Please help me, Mr. Jerk. You are my only hope. Best regards, Oskar Falk. And then I am not hearing anything essentially, so I write him again. Dear Mr. Jerk, it's been about 14 days and I have not heard anything back from you, so I'm trying again. I hope you don't take offense from my original email. I'm assuming that this is a private email address, so I guess you might just not have gotten the time to read my prior email. Either way, I hope to hear from you soon. Warmest regards, Oskar Falk. And so then it goes about 2 more weeks. Nothing happens. So I send again. Dear Mr. Jerk, friendly reminder. And then nothing happens. Until the next day. And I finally get my first response from the president of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. And I'm actually going to recite this word for word. And this is everything, there's nothing removed, nothing added. This is the complete, full email that I received. And this is how it goes. Please do not contact us again. Sent via BlackBerry from T-Mobile. I mean, I said it before. This is the president of the Hollywood fucking Foreign Press Association. This is as high as you can go within this specific and, quite... I'm just at a loss for words. And let's just go back and just really look into this. First of all, there is no opening phrase. There's no hello, there's no dear sir, dear Oscar, or anything. It's just, please do not contact us again. There's not even a punctuation after again. I mean, the guy clearly has written this on the fly. And once again, there's also no ending. I mean, there's no name, there's no best regards. The only thing really significant, apart from the shortness of the actual message, is also the stinging fact that there's nothing to end the email. I wouldn't even call it an email. It's a text. It's a chat message at best. Also, just the fact that it ends with sent via BlackBerry from T-Mobile is just... I mean, that just really stung me. Because I felt like, he's not even sitting at a computer. He's reading this on his BlackBerry somewhere. Fucking BlackBerry people. He has no interest in this. He has obviously not even read the email. He's just skimmed through it and just like, I don't care, this is not my thing. So I decided to write him again. Dear Mr. Jerk, I'm sorry if I have offended anyone with my inquiries, but they are just inquiries. I'm very surprised that you, as the head of the organization, dismisses my plea without even giving me a reason. I'm not attempting to scam anyone, I'm just asking questions, and all I am interested in is memorabilia, but nobody seems to care. Your customer service has actually given me 0 response, and none of the members I've been able to reach have given me much attention either. As I explained earlier, I'm writing to you as a last resort. sort. And you don't even have the courtesy to give me an informative reply stating that you will not help me in this matter due to laws or regulations, if in fact I am violating any laws by asking for items that are specifically screening discs, as I already explained. I mean, selling screen copies is one thing, but selling packaging as a curiosity to a collector isn't illegal as far as I know. Many of the members who receive this have already sold these items on eBay, so it's not like I'm asking you to hand out company secrets or anything like that. In all my years contacting companies, I've never been so bluntly told to just go away. I mean, what kind of company is this? A simple "please do not contact us again" is not enough. I've spent months trying to gather information about these items, and when I finally get lucky, I come through to the person in charge. The only thing he has to say is "please do not contact us again." I mean, you could have just said, "Dear Oscar, I'm sorry, but we cannot give you any of these items you described due to company policies." That would have at least been informative. Now it's like you're shushing me away like an irritating fly circling over your coffee. Seeing as you seem reluctant in wanting to help me or even pointing me towards someone else within the organization, I understand that this matter might not be something the company president usually has time for. I can do nothing but email you once again and state the obvious. Please contact me again. Best regards, Oscar Falk. And, well, then nothing really happens for about a week, so I decide to write him again. Dear Mr. Jerk, please respond with some kind of explanation as to why you don't want to speak with me. And if nothing else, please forward this matter to someone else within the company, as I'm sure you have other matters that are of higher importance. Best regards. And, this is sent on the 24th, and on the 25th I suddenly receive a reply from the president of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. And I will once again read this exactly as it was written to me. So here goes. As they say in Hollywood, get a life! Exclamation point. And that is it. That is the full second email I received from the head, the president, the top dog of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. And now this is not sent from a BlackBerry, or at least doesn't say so in the signature. Not that there is a signature, but you get the idea. So it's, as they say in Hollywood, no punctuation once again, new paragraph, get a life, all in small letters. So, I mean, I'm not sure what to say. This is still very much of a text kind of quality, but I mean, you all know, if you follow me on YouTube and whatnot, that I have a big problem with internet bullying in general, but particularly, trolling and cyberbullies and whatnot is something that rubs me the wrong way and always has. Probably on account of the fact that to some extent I was bullied in school growing up. Not that I got beaten up or anything, but would be called names and things like that. So I guess, with time it's something that's just, I don't know. I mean, I got that kind of stuff when I started out on YouTube, and I still get that every now and then. But I mean, it was a long time since I was, at my prime on YouTube, so it's not like I get a whole lot of comments these days. But over the years, I do every now and then get comments, and I always try to be polite, but I also have a passion for telling people off in a clever way, or trying to do so. Because, I mean, that's just the thing about trolls. People say you shouldn't respond to trolls, but based on my experience, you can actually turn people around, which I've done on several occasions. If you're actually intelligent and respond intellectual and try to sort of ask people why they are, so hostile or negative, a lot of the time people will actually come back and be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I sort of mistook you for a bad person, but you're actually a pretty cool guy, and sorry." It's something I've received multiple examples on, so that's always a win. And if not, if you don't get any kind of reply back, you're still, winning the argumentation, because most of the time people write really stupid stuff. Speaking of writing stupid stuff, once again, a very short and swift and, not very positive reply from the man at the top of this organization. But that didn't really put me off, so I wrote him back once again. Dear Mr. Jerk, in case you didn't figure it out, this is my life. I'm sorry if you woke up on the wrong side of the bed, or if you haven't gotten laid or whatever, but grow up. Being in a position such as yours is probably stressful, but that doesn't mean that you earn some kind of automatic right to act like a dick. Why do you taunt me with these meaningless replies of resentments? Is it something I did to offend you, or do you just dislike people that ask you favors? I'm still waiting for a proper answer. Best regards, Oscar. And another week or so go by, and I write back. Hey, jerk. And once again, this is just paraphrasing. I'm actually using his real name in the original email. I just want to clarify that I'm not going to stop mailing you just because you say please. All I want is a proper answer and an explanation as to why you are so utterly reluctant to help me. Keep in touch. Lovingly yours, Oscar. Another 2 weeks or so. Hello, Mr. Jerk. I trust you had an enjoyable Thursday. Me, while I have had a pretty good day too, I would still like it if you wrote me more often, but I'm guessing you are just too busy. That's it for now. Talk to you soon. I'm not going to keep talking about how much time has passed between these, but I'll just continue reading. Hello, Mr. Jerk. Another month is upon us, and it is now October, and it seems to have come to stay. I'm still curious to know why you don't want to speak with me, but I guess we'll get to the bottom of that eventually. Warmest regards. And then another email. Another 2 months have passed. Why won't you just forward this matter to someone who can help me out? I mean, it's pretty clear that you're not going to deal with this yourself, but not doing anything is just ignorant. Just give me an email address to someone dealing with these kind of issues. I'm sure you have a secretary or someone else beneath you who can assist me with this matter. I mean, you are the president of the company, are you not? Best regards, Oscar Falk. And then we come to my last email, which is from December, and I end my discussion with Mr. Jerk by writing, well, what do you know? It's almost Christmas, the time of giving. And a smiley. Best regards, Oscar Falk. I always thought that this continued for a longer time, but I mean, nowadays, this guy isn't president of the HFPA anymore. I think it's shocking, to say the least, that someone with this kind of authority, you know, whether it's a head of a company or, you know, anyone with any kind of position of power would follow up like this. I mean, it's one thing if you just don't write back, but to actually respond and be this hateful or ignorant or, well, this much of a jerk, to be honest. So that sort of ends the story with Mr. Jerk. I never wrote him again. His email probably doesn't work anymore, seeing as this was an email within the... well, truth be told, it is actually a private email address. So I'd actually forgotten about that. So yeah, maybe I should write him again. I guess we'll just ponder that for a little bit. I guess we could get back to the topic of the Dark Knight, because that's essentially why we're here. And I would just like to comment that in terms of promotional items like this, the money and the machinery that goes into promotional items for movies by Christopher Nolan, I mean, most people don't know this, but this is insane. And I think that The Dark Knight is probably the prime example of this. I wasn't too much of a fan of Batman Begins, to be honest, when it first came out, but when I saw The Dark Knight, I really felt like, okay, this is an amazing film. And I sort of went back and looked at Batman Begins again and sort of realized that it's an interesting film, but The Dark Knight is definitely better, the best of the three in my opinion. I would probably say that The Dark Knight is the best in my opinion. The third one is second best, and Batman Begins is my least favorite. Not to say I don't appreciate Batman Begins, it definitely has some good scenes and good stuff in it, plus it's a sort of interesting backstory, but it doesn't really get to me in the same way that the other two does. I don't know if I've seen too much promotional material for Dark Knight Rises, you know, in some sense I guess they sort of blend together and I forget what's what, but I wanted to mention some other stuff which I've seen over the years. For Batman Begins, I think they made some paperweights, sort of like a popular choice, just making the classic metal bat insignia, sort of like the way he made these homemade throwing stars kind of things in Batman Begins. I know they also made a really unusual promo, which I only saw once. I didn't buy it, and it was actually just a spray can of spray paint. I think it had the Batman logo on it, and then had a little note on it, like a tag with a little string attached that just said, "Does it come in black?" I thought it was sort of a fun gimmick. Really sort of bizarre as to, I mean, spray can for a promotional item. It's so far-fetched, but it's still interesting and very fine. But Still kind of odd to give away a spray can if the film itself doesn't have that much to do with paint, to be honest. I mean, if it had been a promotional item for like a movie about skateboarding or graffiti or something, I guess a spray can would have made more sense, but in this case it was just a weird choice. And then for The Dark Knight, I think that a lot of these really extreme promotional items, I mean, they are incredibly collectible today. Don't have a particular price for the Dark Knight attache case, but I mean, I've seen it go for at least like $300 or that kind of amount. I mean, it's definitely a collectible which has risen in value. Some other cool stuff, they made like a metallic little business card holder, which also came presented in this lovely metal case. Not an attaché case, but still a very beautiful case. I don't remember exactly what the story was behind this, but I know that some organization orchestrated sort of like these bizarre spectacles where you would have like a scavenger hunt, sort of urging people to go to find like a location. I don't know what the clues were, but these fans would run around the city to these places, and like at these places they would find new clues. And then the scavenger hunt would sort of end at some place, and there would be like a prize. I forget exactly what the prize was in these instances, but I think it was something that ended in someone getting like a bowling ball, like a custom bowling ball with like a Joker print. But there was a lot of fun stunts like that. I know that they made Gotham City newspaper, and there was also like a bag of money which actually contained fake money, like printed bills from the Bank of Gotham. Not just like one stack, like actually a full bag of money from this fake bank from the movies. I think it might have been also like a prize in some kind of contest, because I haven't seen too many of these on eBay or such over the years. But there's a lot of stuff like that, like paperweights sort of encased in glass and stuff. I think they did a lot of that thing for Dark Knight Rises. But in any regards, getting back to the story, I was completely out of luck, and nothing really happened. And then in the back of my head I was like, whatever happened to Lidwin? Did he ever find the missing pieces to his set? So I actually got in touch with Lidwin and I wrote him, whatever happened to the Dark Knight set? Did you sell it or what's been going on? And he was like, well, no, I haven't. I still have it. And just getting down to business, being like, do you have any sort of thought on selling this? And I don't remember exactly, what he said, but as luck would have it, he actually turned around and he actually let me purchase it. I think I essentially purchased the full set. So I purchased his full Dark Knight set with the case and with the cards and with the cardboard sleeve, and then I just took the cardboard sleeve I was missing to complete my set, and then I resold his stuff. I'm pretty sure I got good money for it, so it's definitely worth it. But that is essentially the way it happened. So once again, looking back at it, I just think it's sort of funny how this played out. I mean, it's like I started buying this from the eBay seller, was asking him to include the sleeve. He included it, but I didn't win the auction. The auction ended up going to my friend. My friend contacted me by chance. I ended up getting the sleeve, which I was trying to purchase to begin with. It just took me like, I don't know how many years before I finally found it. This is something that will stay on my collecting shelf forever. I wouldn't ever want to break the promise of reselling or giving away the discs, because I don't want my secret source to have any kind of blowback from this, even though I really don't believe it would cause any problems these days. But I'm definitely gonna get true to my word, so this will never leave my home, and I'm still feeling real lucky that I got it in my collection. And well, that is my story of addiction today. Except, of course, I guess there is one loose end which I feel that we're not really quite done with. And that is the topic of Mr. Jerk. I mean, it's been so many years since I wrote him that last email, but it doesn't feel like neither me or him got some kind of closure with this. And so I actually decided to sit down and write him one final email. And well, this is what I wrote. Dear Mr. Jerk, I know it's been many years since you stopped replying to what little and meaningless conversation we had, but I decided to write you one final email, even if you are no longer the president of the HFPA. I also imagine it's quite possible that this email address is out of use by now, but even if I end up with an auto-reply from some server saying that that's the case, well, I guess it will still be more informative than any of the replies I've received from you in the past. If this email does find you, then I would just like to state the following. I think that your responses to my old emails were very immature, and I find it shocking that someone in your position would have written them. But hopefully you have grown up by now and ended up being a nicer person in general, especially to people who ask you for little help. I found the items I was talking about several years ago, and if it wasn't for the fact that I'm recording a podcast to talk about this particular collectible, I probably wouldn't even have thought about the matter again. Thankfully, your immature responses and complete lack of respect for me actually ended up as a great addition to the story in my podcast, as well as a prime example of how anyone can be a total douchebag, but I'm not mentioning your name anywhere, as I don't believe in publicly shaming people that way. And so, with all this said, I have now decided to leave you with these parting words. Please don't contact me again, unless you feel like apologizing after all these years. And as we say in Sweden, har man tagit fan I båten, då får man ro honom I land. Best regards, Oscar Falk.
And that's it. That was my story. Story of addiction today. Ooh.
Right, so that was episode 3 of Stories of Addiction, and like I mentioned in the intro, this is an idea which I'd had on my mind for quite a long time to make an episode for. So yeah, I think it came out alright. I think the whole sort of arc with the mail correspondence worked out great, which was one of the things I didn't even think about in the beginning, and then it sort of became like this thing where I sort of remembered these emails that I had back in the day and sort of think like, you know, that's actually an interesting little part of this. And in regards to the email, I can also mention that, well, no, Mr. Jerk has not responded. I essentially sent him the email 3 days ago. I know 3 days isn't a lot, and I mean, he's probably pretty old these days. I didn't get an auto reply, so it's not like it bounced or anything. It did actually go somewhere, which I think is interesting. But I mean, I could be sitting around waiting for a response forever because I don't think he's grown up yet. So yeah. In order to close the case about the whole Mr. Jerk story, one of the things you might be curious about is the Swedish saying that I'm ending the letter with, just in case you don't want to go around and Google that. And quite frankly, if you do try to sort of translate it with Google or something, I think you'll probably end up with a pretty poor translation anyway. Just before we wrap this up, I thought I would tell you the saying, which goes, har man tagit fan I båten så får man ro honom I land. Pretty old saying, and it's one of those things which I had essentially never heard. I sort of asked my girlfriend, sort of saying like, can you just, give me some example of Swedish sayings? Because I couldn't really think of a good one, and she started throwing a couple out, and I think this was like the second one she said, and I'm like, I've never actually heard that. That's actually pretty good. And essentially what it translates to is that if you have taken the devil in your boat, you better be prepared to row him ashore. I mean, there's like a million sayings that are essentially the same thing. If you can't stand the heat, stay out of the kitchen. If you can't do the time, don't do the crime. Like, if you aren't prepared to take the consequences of your actions, then, maybe you shouldn't have made those actions. Essentially what it boils down to. And in this particular case, I am obviously referring to the fact that, he was an asshole. He started this by sending me these very ignorant and very immature responses. And I know this is not big stuff. I mean, this is just an email and it's a little thing, and most people will probably just be like, oh, go fuck yourself, or, maybe not even care about it. But to me, back in the day, I felt really frustrated with this because I was reaching out to somebody for help, and this was a person in a bit of power in some sense, but it's not something that's bothered me over the years. I mean, I haven't been harvesting like any anger towards this guy or anything, and I still don't. I mean, yeah, he's a douchebag, but there's a million douchebags in the world. I haven't been wasting my energy on sort of thinking about this over the years. It's essentially just something that came up when I started thinking about doing this podcast. But that is essentially it. If you have any suggestions on other topics or things that you want to know more about, or thoughts on this podcast that you would like to share, would be really appreciated. Thank you very much for listening, and as usual, I hope to see you back for the next episode in about a year or so. Alright, bye everybody.